Okay, well, another video for Final Fantasy XIV, even though I said I was quitting after Endwalker, but that still holds very much true, given the circumstances of things. I have personally learned, and unfortunately, I'm deciding to put that out there here in video form. But I also have text form on my various media outlets as well. Well, to start off, I never thought I'd ever come to have resentment in my heart for a Final Fantasy of all things. Now, I say resentment because I've cared way too much for too long. And sadly, my effort has gone unnoticed and unrewarded. And it's not just me, of course, but there's been other voices in the game sphere of Final Fantasy XIV that have also tried and tried to voice concerns, to voice complaints. But sadly, we know now that no one's listening. So, with that, you might ask, why make this video then if I feel like no one's even listening at all? Well, because maybe someday, somewhere, this little video of mine will reach someone's ears and it'll either change their outlook or maybe make them reconsider. But highly unlikely once I, reveal all I have to say. So, I don't really have the confidence that this video will go anywhere, if at all. Just a disclaimer before we get deep into it. If you're a new player, then don't worry about this, okay? Just enjoy what time you have with this game. It was special. It is special to some still, but for me that's no longer the case. And I'm going to say why in this video. And if you're a new player, you're not gonna really agree with me. I'm just gonna be blunt and tell you that now. Because you're still stuck in that honeymoon phase with the rose-tinted glasses. And you're still, I guess, starstruck. But as for everyone else who's been around the block for quite some time now, I hope you'll consider these words carefully and not just see it as inherently negative for the sake of being negative. Because that's not my purpose here, to be overtly negative. But unfortunately, I have to take this aggressive stance because, well, trying to be diplomatic and be sensible just isn't work, so now I'm gonna get loud. and actually voice my actual frustrations and my disappointments with this game, with how it's handled, with how it's developed, with who handles feedback, who the community is. So if you can't take criticism, you can't handle backlash, then shoo, go away. You're not going to help this conversation. In fact, you're just going to be trolling. And I don't quite care for it. I don't have the energy anymore to deal with the people that foam at the mouth for this game. So, just go do yourself a favor and just don't even try to listen. Because I know you're not going to listen. You're just going to take things out of context and you're going to twist the words that I say and try to generate drama or hate. You know what? Fine. If that's how you get your rocks off, fine. Do what you gotta do, but don't expect me to feed your attentions, because I'm not going to. I'm not going to entertain a response. Hell, I might not even read your comments, because like I said, I don't really have the hopes that this video is even going to go anywhere. But if you want to hate away. You want to troll, go ahead and troll, but if you're looking for me to get angry at you, to start fighting with you in the comments, then you're not going to get that, because frankly, I just don't care anymore. So, c'est la vie. Sticks and stones, all that. So, I'm going to start with the timeline here. Let's start with the beginning, shall we? 1.0. Undoubtedly, we know that was a disaster. We know they tried to pander to nostalgia, and only that. And we were still, they tried and failed to captivate an audience. Well, they did still get an audience, of course, but that audience was minuscule compared to now. And that audience, of course, however small, did foster some semblance of a small community, which was, for the most part, understanding and welcoming, as they came from a previous MMO that's Final Fantasy related called Final Fantasy XI, which is still relevant somewhat, but really it's kind of a ghost town now because people have just stopped caring, really. You really only get the diehards, like the players who really want the nostalgia, that will still go back to log into 11 every once in a while. But as far as updates go for 11, it's really not much except for quality of life and few sprucing and tweaking here and there. Maybe a event, and that's about it. Like, 11 is in, like, full maintenance mode, I guess is what the kids call it these days. Or, I guess, not just the kids, but the boomers. But Anyway, they tried to copy 11 for 1.0 and it didn't work out. We all know that. And there was lots of bad press, lots of negative feedback. And the company was forced to step in because of said bad press and bad feedback, and had to publicly apologize. Like, legitimately, they had the president and everything of the company had to come up and say, hey, we made an error, and we apologize. And then they hired new staff and a new lead, that being Mr. Naoki Yoshida, who had worked on previous projects, one of which is Final Fantasy XI and another Dragon Quest. As well as various other projects and titles to his name. Now, I'm sure he's a wholesome guy and everything, but he is kind of stuck in a hard place, and there's a language barrier as well. And even though he tries to be part of the gang, he tries to, really take a look at what players are saying and talking about. Unfortunately, I just feel like there's things that he just can't understand, like, all on his own. And unfortunately and regrettably, it's led to the current circumstance that I find myself in. But fast forward, now we're in 2.0. Okay, the game's refreshed. It's been breathed new life into it. Bad systems are taken out. The world was reimagined and everything was fine. Now I say fine because it was relatively fine. There were still a few bugs here and there, a few glitches and growing pains, if you will. But overall, the overall perceived experience for A Realm Reborn and everything was positive. And lots of people fell in love, myself included. Even though I wasn't really expecting to fall in love with this kind of game, because they tend to foster toxic relationships and very not so welcoming communities and players. And that's still true today in this game. Like, I did have some bad experiences with players in Final Fantasy XIV. Even starting out. And I had almost quit many times because of my problems with the community of players. Because this might be kind of a little personal, so if it makes you uncomfortable to know about this, then I don't really know what to tell you. I'm sorry, I guess. But I struggle with some issues in life, to put it lightly. And so, whenever I have bad experiences with people, it really tends to dig a deep wound. And that's why I try to avoid things like this game as much as possible. But rather than wallow and quit because of my grievances with other people, I decided to just give this game a chance, another chance, and I did. And I didn't regret it, of course. I did enjoy what I could out of this game for as long as I could. But when I began to realize certain things, it just kind of broke me a little bit. It made me really step back and consider what it is I'm actually doing here, why I'm still here, why should I even still be here. But anyway, fast forward even after A Realm Reborn's success and its wonderful, magical feeling, they tried to recreate that with Heaven's Ward, which, from a story standpoint and world building, I'd say they hit the nail on the head there, but gameplay, not so much. Granted, they tried a few new things, and I applaud them for that. I will never cut the developers down for trying to do new things, to sort of bring the game some extra spice and quality. But people just tend to get upset for whatever reason that these new things come out and are not met to their required expectations, in quotations. And basically what I know about, Japanese culture is that they really do tend to take it to heart when, they're chastised or criticized heavily for their work that they do and create. And so, that is one factor to why things have gotten as bad as they are now, from the window that I look through. Your window might be different, like I've said earlier here in this video. Some of you are still deadlocked into the honeymoon phase with those rosy glasses, and that's perfectly fine. You just keep being you and enjoying what you enjoy, but for those players who know better, who've been around, I have a lot to say to you. But anyway, let's finish. Stormblood came along, and again, nothing fundamentally different. Pretty much the same besides certain story factors, even though the beats, though, still feel the same. And of course, the main cast still the same, with introductions of side characters who really didn't have much of an impact. But then there's always, of course, the new jobs. Everybody loves those. But if you're relying on a new job to try and sell a game, that's just pretty much a poor outlook, in my honest opinion. So, Stormblood had ups and downs, but mostly downs. Was not very favored by the larger audience at whole. Granted, I still liked the areas and I still like that I got to play the job that I was wanting to have, which was samurai. But even I wasn't happy with the state of endgame content and the gameplay loop, if you will. Now comes Shadowbringers, and that kind of fixed things slightly, but in the end, nothing major was added. Unless you consider Bosnia stuff major, but that's really, when you get down to it, it's the same as what they added to Stormblood, the Eureka Zone. And Eureka was mixed reviews as well, but mostly disliked. So they took out what people disliked, okay, and kind of amped up this new version of it called Bosnia Southern Front. And sure, it was okay for a while, but then it gets tedious the longer you drag it on. And this is one of the problems that these developers have, because they're not exactly receiving the right type of feedback. And I'm going to get into that, trust me, I'm going to rip the feedback part. But the devs here seem to struggle with making content that's repeatable, that makes people want to repeat the content. And that's really unfortunate, because I feel like if they really put their minds to it, they could achieve something close to perfection, because as you know, perfection does not exist, but they could achieve something close enough to it if they really set their minds to it. But unfortunately, like I said, there's a disconnect between audience and developer, and that disconnect, of course, falls into the laps of one who's responsible. You could call them the villains of this game, of Final Fantasy, the true villains. But before we get to that, let's finish Shadowbringers and move on to Endwalker. But yeah, Shadowbringers, mostly the same, except they've decided to revamp how combat feels and plays, which was great. I'm glad. It made it feel less tedious, less boring, and less work. And Endwalker comes, and that's where things started to really go downhill for me and other players. Okay? Because, once again, here we go. The new same repetitive grind. Couple shinies to keep you happy, the jobs. But what else really is there for us to really to do as longtime supporters and players of this game? That's my main point I'm getting at here. Like I said, new players, it doesn't really matter, because they're gonna keep enjoying the things that they enjoy. They're still in their honeymoon phase with the rosy glasses. But there will come a time when they're in the same shoes that I and others are in here. And unfortunately, by the time they reach that point, really it's going to be too late. And this game, You can call me a doomer or whatever you want. Like I said, I'm not going to entertain the trolls or the haters, okay? But the longer this goes on, the worse things are going to become. Okay? And it is. This has happened multiple times in many other games that boasted high success and perfect communities and all that fun stuff. Okay? Buzzwords, if you will, to get people hyped and energetic. But couldn't be farther from the truth. Really. Honest to gods, it couldn't be farther from the truth. And sadly, players like me have to come to grips with it and accept the reality, which is cruel and unforgiving. Now, you might be confused if you've still listened up to this point, but let's just go through some things yet again. A Realm Reborn, okay. What did we get out of it? Extreme dungeons. Multiple dungeons, of course, alongside those extreme dungeons. We had the Coils of Bahamut, our first real raids, which, of course, got expanded upon and had a harder version. And we've got our first 24-man raid of 24 people, the Crystal Tower series. We had Primals fights, both hard mode versions and extreme versions, which to me the hard mode versions never really made sense. I don't know why they decided to have 3 different versions, but yeah, they did for whatever purpose or reason. But they had options for trials of your flavor, I guess. PvP, which was in a strange place, and I didn't really play a whole much of A Realm Reborn's PvP, but they had team death matches, they had like duo death matches, like 2-on-2. Then they had the frontline thing, which was parties of 8 versus 8. And, oh man, was that a shit show. But, yeah. Was a thing. Then they added Seal Rock, which, give or take, it was okay-ish, but it just kind of fell flat like the other one. Like I said, PvP was really in a weird place in The Realm Reborn. Then we got a new job. Like, not even add a new expansion, but just like halfway between A Realm Reborn and Heavensward points, they just straight up gave us a new job. They're like, hey, we've been working on this super secret but totally fun thing. And they tease little videos of it, and people are like, oh my god, it's it's a shinobi, it's a ninja, oh fun. And sure enough, they released it, shinobi, which they split it into two categories, of course, rogue and ninja, which I still don't know why they did that. It's so weird that they did that. They should have just, rolled with ninja, because that's what it ended up being anyway. But, yeah, they had this roguish slash ninja job that they pushed out. So that was a lot of fun to level, and it became my main for a good while, because I didn't have my samurai, which was disappointing, but I let that slide and not block my perception the rest of the game of Realm Reborn. And then we got weddings, and those weddings were expanded upon, because they used to be just the male and female, but then, players, of course, were outcrying, I guess you could say, that didn't feel inclusive enough. And so Mr. Naoki Yoshida, when he read these comments, was like, you know what, that's fair. So he updated it to make it so that people could marry regardless of gender, which is super nice of him to do. So there you go. Equality and inclusivity, which is very wonderful. And then we got the gold saucer. Great stuff. Little fun mini games and little events to play for, items to earn. Plus the nostalgia of Final Fantasy XIV. Really, I mean, there's a lot of things in this game that only followers of Final Fantasy games would really catch and get and understand, like what they are. But yeah. And then the treasure maps, of course, were a thing. Could do them solo or with a party. And they also eventually tied them into the relic weapon quests, which we got started in A Realm Reborn. And those relic weapons were a real grind. Very, very long and tedious, and lots of content had to be done, both in fates and dungeons or trials, as well as raids too. So they utilized every content they could to incorporate the weapon grind, which is pretty good, I guess. But it was maybe a bit too long, I felt. And I never really got to finish building a weapon, because by the time I caught up, was catching up, through this grind, it was already close to Heavensward, so they kind of adjusted that in the next expansion, though. Made it less lengthy, I guess, but still equal amounts of a pain of a grind. But yeah, so A Realm Reborn had a lot of stuff. It was jam-packed full of content. Everything was fresh and new for players. It was really a fantastic time to be playing this game, was during A Realm Reborn, because everything was refreshing. Everything was new. You didn't know what was coming next, basically. And it wasn't all the same either. Everything, like I said, was a surprise. And that's sorely what's needed right now, in all honesty. Like, I'm so sad and torn that they abandoned the practice of surprising us. It's really unfortunate, but I'm going to get into, like I said, there's a couple named villains that you need to be aware of, and why this game is in such a bad rut, such a bad, terrible state right now. Now, moving on to Heaven's Word, what was new? Well, 3 new jobs, new zones, of course, and they added the Deep Dungeon and the Diadem. Both great stuff, and the Deep Dungeon also got updated to have like challenging floors for those who want to just try a solo challenge, or you know, form a group to challenge the harder, more difficult floor levels. And then the people weren't so happy about Datum, of course, which, I mean, that's fair for the first iteration, but they did change it up later throughout the expansion, which I think was okay, and I very much enjoyed it. But some vocal minority had to make their big stink about it and decided it was terrible. Really, guys, I'll tell you, it wasn't as terrible as what this vocal minority will make it out to be. Like, this vocal minority will try to tell you, like, oh yeah, I remember that sucked, it was awful. That I was tied to RNG based crap, and basically everyone was getting free stuff. Just terrible. Basically gatekeepers, and fucking elitists. They were mad that Mr. Casual could just walk up in this Datum place and get the very best in slot stuff. That's the whole reason why it was cut down. Like, it wasn't because it was bad, terrible content. Like, let me tell you, it was like a community thing. It was like an open area where people partied up and they would just farm like nodes and spawn like creatures, like rare creatures who would drop like special items and stuff like that. Like, really. And even if you didn't want the gear, you could turn that stuff in to earn a currency to get rewards. Sounds a lot like something else we know of, huh? But yet, that something else doesn't get chastised as much by these so-called gatekeepers and elitists. Isn't that funny how that works out? Well, yeah, there was that, and then they revisited maps again and added like a little mini dungeon thing to maps, which was okay. And then, of course, there was whole debacles about job balancing and everything. Everyone was mad about Warrior and about Astrologian and Machinist and Bard and Ninja being at the top. You were super salty about that. And devs are like, well, what can we do about that, I tried different things and players were still mad and salty. And then, well, then they just nuked everything in Stormblood completely. So, starting to notice a pattern here, aren't we? People get what they ask for, but then they regret what they ask for. How funny karma works. But that was it, really. So, kind of pales in comparison, really, doesn't it? Everything else about Heaven's Word was pretty much the same. Same deal, same grind. Now we get to Stormblood. And see, this is where it really starts to really hit people's nerves. Sure, same thing. New jobs, new areas. Of course, they revisit maps again. Add slot wheel thing to it. Okay, well, that's fantastic, but it's still maps at the end of the day. The next thing. That old Eureka. Oh, fun. By fun, I mean tortures. Like, how the fuck does anyone ever have the time to do such a type of content's beyond me. Yeah, and then of course we'll get the old argument, min-maxing or skill issue. You know what? Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. It's not skill issue or anything. It's just by design made to be tedious and long. And that's what put off a lot of people initially on Eureka's, that the earlier levels just feel bad and terrible. It doesn't make you even want to stay in it because of how god-awful it is. Not to diminish the punishment fucking system in it. Yeah, there's a punishment system in Eureka. Like, if you fail and no one comes and picks you up or rescues you, well, guess what? Your 2 hours or whatever hours you spent are gone down the toilet. Fucking brilliant design. And you get to go back and spend another couple hours. Doesn't that sound fun? And then the reward systems wasn't even really that great. So really, what incentive did they have people other than, ooh, shiny pretty armor, ooh, shiny pretty weapon? Really? Now granted, there was Rival Wings, a new PvP, which I still like and thought was pretty okay, pretty fun. Still sad that they closed down the initial first one, because it was oh so fun, and the salt was delicious to farm. But once again, they cave to the vocal minority once more. Makes you really wonder who's really in charge of handling feedback, doesn't it? Because like I said, Mr. Yoshida, oh, he loves to read stuff. He loves to hear what we have to say about his product, his dream, his game, you know? That goes both whether it's negative or positive. He loves it. He wants to know it. But unfortunately, his understanding of the greater community of whole, the greater player base as whole, is limited. Because of that limitedness, unfortunately, he can only get bits and pieces, and that's not enough clarity for him to really say, I have a good point there. Maybe I should investigate this. Or, you know what, maybe we should try and change that, or tweak this, or tweak that, or adjust this, adjust that, you know? Maybe so. But unfortunately, he doesn't quite get those thoughts come up often because language barrier, culture barrier, you know? The man just really, when he looks at feedback, I feel like he really just needs to have like one of his dedicated translators, be that Mr. Koji Fox or Mr. Foxclon or even Aimi-sama or Aimi-san. He just needs to grab one of them and say, hey, help me look through these comments, these things, and tell me if there's anything I should know, or like if there's anything like we should look into. You know? Like, I really feel like he should do that. It's either that or, like, you know, maybe he needs to brush up on some language skills himself so he can break that barrier. Because I feel like for the longest time, like, he really doesn't get it. Like, he really doesn't understand, like, what the greater whole of the community's talking about. And like I said, he likes to include himself as like a player too amongst people. In fact, all over that cesspool Twitter, which is now X, I guess, people are posting pictures of FanFest with him just like chilling back and partying with, you know, guests and fans instead of, you know, having a VIP seat, which he really does have full access to, as being that he's, you know, basically one of the head organizers of the event. Basically a celebrity, if you will. And he could easily have comfort and just privacy by sitting in VIP area, but for whatever reason, you know, he decides to just like be one of the gang and just party with everyone that's out in the foyer and all that stuff. Which I guess good on him, you know. It shows that he's human like the rest of us, you know. And that's great, that's fantastic and everything, but I do worry for the man's safety in case, you know, some crazy fans get out of hand and they try to like shank him or shake him down, you know. And that's the other thing, I heard security was not great at this fan fest either. That was another worrying thing. Like, man was taking risks. But I guess some people are just super free-spirited that way. I can relate, as I am also a free-spirited person. So, it is what it is, you know. But, unfortunately, it's just really hard, I feel like, for him to get, like, the constructive feedback that is greatly and sorely needed. But anyway, Stormblood didn't offer too much. And people weren't happy. Myself included was having second thoughts and doubts. But then comes the Redeemer, Shadowbringers. You know, like I said earlier, it kind of fixed certain things with the battle. And, you know, they did relax, easing up on the grind loop a bit in Shadowbringers, which that's probably the whole reason why Shadowbringers felt great, felt cozy, is because, you know, they took out that repetition, the same old, they took that out and opted in to add more living content, basically. Like, you might have heard some memes of people nicknaming Shadowbringers Casual Bringers. Like I said, there's those fucking gatekeepers and elitists again. That's basically because a lot of the content consisted of, like, crafting and, like, gathering. And there's one thing I forgot to mention about Rumbleboard's content too, is, like, we had the beast tribes added then too. And those have been repeated ever since then. But again, you know, battle-wise, there wasn't much. Battle-wise. Oh, I forgot to also say, Stormblood, very important content for at least raiders, is when we got Ultimate. So, there you go. If you were a hardcore gamer and stuff, then yeah, you probably had a good time during Stormblood with Ultimate. Which is also something that's repeated. Now, are you seeing a pattern here? Because I sure fucking did, and am. If you're not, then I don't know what to tell you. Open your ears. Maybe fix your lenses. Clean out the earwax. Do what you gotta do, you know. Maybe start paying attention more often. You'll figure things out, like I have. But that's why I'm making this video anyway, I guess, is to help the uneducated or the blind and lost sheep find their way. Even though, like I said, I don't have confidence that this video is really gonna make any difference. Probably won't. But that's hence why I have the title for this video. It's because really it feels better to just give up than to really keep trying as a long-time player. Because like I said, if you've been paying attention, you've seen this pattern play out. You really start to wonder to yourself, what the fuck am I doing with my life? What am I paying this for anyway? You know? But anyway, let's keep moving on, shall we? And we come after Shadowbringers to where here and where I'm finally throwing in my towel and saying that enough is enough. Because here comes Endwalker. Well, what is it that we get for Endwalker, really? Oh, more of the same, huh? That's right, you heard it here, more of the same. It's the exclusion, of course. They decided not to do, a Eureka or Bosnia-like zone. Instead, you just get the weapon for free by doing a short little quest and a bit of a tome grind thing. And, that's great for the casuals, because that's really what, it was meant for. It was meant for the casuals players. In essence, the relic weapons are meant for the casuals, because you want to know why? Because, Mr. Elitists and Gatekeepers, they get their fancy weapons from Ultimates, and from, now they got Unreal content to get armor from, on top of the raid weapons they get from, Savage raiding and Ultimate, so... But really, on the note of the Unreal content, it's just repetitive trials, only you're synced down. Or, sorry, you're not synced down, but the bosses are synced up to your level. Which I guess that makes it challenging, even though I'm pretty fucking sure if people have been farming these over the expansions and even still farming them, realize it's really just the same, but more damage output, I guess. More damage. Real innovative, huh? And then there's the Island Sanctuary, which really was completely off the mark of what players wanted. And then now players are trying to say they want to be instancy housing. Which, on the note of housing, by the way, that's one of the negative sides of this game. They should have really had this instance housing ideas way before they decided to keep pushing for more wards and more fucking apartments. Nobody likes the apartments. We've told them countless times, okay? We have. We told them we don't like limited housing. We don't like apartments. But do they listen? Apparently not. That's because of a certain villain in this game's atmosphere is making it really fucking difficult for us to get through to them. Through to the developers, okay? And that's where my frustration is. That's why, I'm sorry, YouTube, I drop an F-bomb, okay? Because this really is incredibly frustrating. Right, Eureka and cons. The idea for Eureka, players asked for like a community garden. Okay, emphasis on community. Okay, they wanted to have a shared little area in the housing district where people could go to plant their plants and harvest them and interact with their neighbors. And I guess they wanted to put minions, have like a little bit of a farm thing going on. And it seems like that completely blew out of the water for what people were asking for. And now it's just basically a clicking simulator. Click node here, click this node here, harvest this, harvest that. Autonomize your wage slaves and make them do this or do that, then come back whenever you damn feel like to check up on them and collect currency and whatever else. It's monotonous, you know. And really don't know why. Going to be. And then, of course, they've had an ability to put out these like landmark things which you can explore around and use for your pictures and whatever else you want to do with them. And it really makes me wonder, you know, like, golly gee, they spend so much time on developing this and adding resources to it, but yet they can't go back to other things players have been asking them to fix. Golly gee, why is that? Despite people asking for and complaining for years, literal years, of this game's lifespan. You know, complaining about things like the glamour options being too restrictive. For example, complaining about that goddamn housing problem for years. Still not fixed. In fact, it's made worse now. Oh, and let's go back to, like, reuse stuff. As I've outlined here, they've reused content. They've reused assets, too. Reused enemies and mounts with recolors, reskins, weapons, armor. Reused assets, but with different colors of paint. Then character customization. Well, people wanted to have more options, but can they do that? Oh, no, we can't do that, no. Well, people have asked for it. That's what you told us to do. So why are you making up excuses? Oh, well, too much development. Really? It's too much development to fix your flippin' game. Oh, it's not like your players are paying you to play the game, right? Of course not. Not like that we're throwing money at a wall at you to do exactly what we think you were going to do for us. Oh, but that's right. I forgot. We got to talk about our villain. Our villains, I should say. So let's talk about them now, shall we? So let's go. We have our good old classic villain, of course. The mustache twirling Monopoly man. Yep, that's right. Daddy Big Bucks pays the checks, writes the checks, and pays out the bills. Don't we just fucking love him? Yep. Greedy corporate and capitalists at their finest. You gotta love them, don't you? And trust me, they've sunk their teeth deep into this game. Deep enough to the point that this game is bleeding out. And probably on the danger of drying out at this point, I'd say. Oh, but hey. Old Deus doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just being negative, Nancy. Corporate is good for gaming. Totally good for gaming. So good. Not like they've crushed several IPs, burned through them. Gee, I wonder how those other games are doing that they've dried out. I wonder how those other MMOs are doing right now. Still active? Oh, maybe a handful. Not active enough to keep the queues times rolling, though, right? Not active enough to find groups, unless you search all over the whole damn internet. But yeah, corporate just kills whatever it touches. Plain and simple. The snake oil salesman, if you will. And unfortunately, their strategy is working quite wonders on the ignorant masses below them. Regrettably so. Which lead us to our next villain underneath them, the Fall Guys. And yes, you can take that as a pun. And yes, that's being an actual fucking thing in this game. I wish I was fucking joking, by the way. I'm not. They're literally adding fucking Fall Guys to Final Fantasy now. God help us all. But yes, here comes the Fall Guy villain. Oh yes, we know the type. Yes, they're the people that are the corporate's mouthpieces. They sell and sell and sell and sell. And they generate hype by telling you half-truths and half-lies. They get you all riled up, all foaming at the mouth. They tell you the words you want to hear, whisper it in your ears like a bandit in the night, singing you softly to go to bed while they rob you blind as you're passed out. Oh yes, I do so love this villain the most. Aren't they great? And you might actually argue that this villain's probably the most egregious one of this game that we have to contend with. But they can be dealt with. That's only if people actually wake up, like I have, like several others of people like me have, which I don't see that happening anytime soon. Is considering how I've seen my fellow content creators actively going against their morals just because they stand in the presence of some big great celebrities. That's where they bend the knee. Fucking hypocrites. I hate content creators like them. Let me tell you. Like, they're the worst of us. They have no moral grounds, no honor, no shame. Pitiful. And they don't have my respect. Nor should they anyone worth of their salt. Or worth their caliber. Because these are just shills, paid actors. They don't deserve pay. The praise that they get, in my opinion. And either way, it just shows you that they would sell out their audience to the highest bidder. Honestly, my advice would be just to unsubscribe from them. They're not doing you any favors by remaining consistent. And trust me, they'll never find fault in themselves because they're narcissistic pigs. Egoists. They'll deflect any responsibility or blame that comes on their shoulders. That's what they're good at. That's what liars and hypocrites are great at doing. Deflect, 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 dodge, dodge, dodge. Blame, 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 blame game to someone else. Or playing the victim card, too. That's another fucking annoying thing that content creators like them do. Play the victim and be like, well, you should feel sorry for me. I didn't know what I was getting into. And then they'll cry the crocodile tears. Please pity me. I deserve to have pity. Because it's not my fault, it's your fault, it's their fault. Yeah. Narcissists, egoists 101. When your argument starts to fall apart, then resort to playing victim. If blaming doesn't work. But yeah. Let's go back to our fall guy though, shall we? Let's name them, shall we? Let's see. Global Community Producer. Global Community Director. Global Community Team. What's their responsibilities, you might ask? Why, it's to collect your feedback from global audience. It's to sit here and skim through videos like this one here to see if there's anything of value to take from it, or if it's just grandstanding or gaslighting. Because they don't like their masters being called out. Like this. Oh, no, they don't. In fact, they promote witch hunts, believe it or not. They're, in fact, the major gatekeepers of this game. The head honcho gatekeepers, you might even say. Because if you're not with them, well, then guess what? You're against them. So they're going to launch a campaign with their rabid fandom, with their sheeple that they sold the game to. Gonna rile up the base, That's what they do. And say, you should hate this person. He's talking bad about your game. He's talking bad about your savior and God King Yoshi P. Go after this guy. Dox him. Find where he is. Harass him. Spam hate at him. Go, my minions. Go, my gremlins. Go, go, go. But yes, these global paid actors are perhaps your biggest obstacle in this game. And I know the truth about them. Oh yes, I know their ugly faces. And I'm calling it out now because I'm angry, if you couldn't tell. I'm enraged by the state of this game is falling into. And like I said, you might say, why should I even care if I'm quitting, if I'm leaving? A good point. Why should I? Well, it's because, maybe like you, I actually fucking cared for this game at one point. And it was actually something I looked forward to as an enjoyable hobby. To fill the time of this empty void that we call life itself. Imagine that, huh? People treating an MMO like a hobby. Oh, unimaginable it is. But you know what? I've finally seen the light. And I've had enough dealing with all this. Which is why I decided to make this video, because I've had enough. And I'm not going to remain silent anymore. Like I said, there's been years of issues being ignored. And you have these villains to thank for it. But they're not the only villains, of course. Below them, is rabid and cult-like imbecile fans. Yeah, I'm gonna insult them and call them names. Go ahead, cry about it. Try to cancel me. I really don't give a shit anymore. Because like I said, I don't care to entertain the trolls or haters which are in this category of villain in this community. They make this game look bad. They make the players of this game look bad. And unfortunately, they've grown in numbers ever since Shadowbringers. and subsequently Endwalker here. Their numbers have only swelled, while, regrettably, those of us who actually give a damn, or gave a damn, our numbers are decreasing daily, or monthly, or yearly. It just keeps shrinking, 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 which is what they want. But you know what? There's a saying that's called reap what you sow, which is basically a fancy way of saying karma's a bitch, and you get what you get. You get what you deserve. So, yeah, they can keep making us grow smaller and smaller till there's none of us left. But you know what? When they no longer have anyone to argue with, well, what's the law of nature? That's right. People will devour themselves. They'll devour each other instead of the people that like me that they pushed out and got rid of. People like us they viewed as problematic because we tell the truth, because we stand up so that you, I'm talking to you directly, viewer, so that you can have a much better game than this pile of crap that we've had to deal with and suffer for 10 whole fucking years. So, really, I don't know much else to add besides they've released new player character races that have been limited by what they can customize. Oh, and guess who steps in to fix these issues that this game supposedly can't do? Oh, the players themselves. Wow! Imagine that. Who knew the players themselves could innovate themselves? Basically telling corporate, guess what? Fuck you, corporate. You won't do it, I'll do it myself. Imagine that. When the player has to give the middle finger to the villains and do stuff themselves. Oh, but guess what? Then they're gonna sit. They're gonna be vilified. These players that are doing these things behind corporate's back. Because you know what that means? Because they decide, oh, you can't do that. That's illegal. That's not allowed. Hey, developer. They tap the developer, so they're like, hey, get rid of that guy. Yeah. He's breaking the terms of service, right? Bat him. Fuck that guy. Fuck that customer who may have invested hours and hours into your game. And who enhances your game for the better of all to enjoy. Yeah, screw that guy. That's messing with my money. Get rid of him. And that's the hard, cold facts of it. And why we can't have nice things in this game. Big old daddy corporate says money, 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 give money. Oh, but you're gonna do things on your own? Well, nope, I don't want your money no more. Take a hike. duality of it all, huh? Isn't it fucking wonderful? Christ almighty. But yeah, I can't take it anymore. You want me to hand you the victory, you sheeple, you trolls, you haters? Well, here you go. I'm handing you the win, okay? Sure. Go ahead, type W in the chats. Go ahead. WWWWW. That's all you really know how to do, you mindless fucks. Just spam constantly. That's really all you know how to do. And me, I'm just greatly disappointed that these developers are backed against the wall. Because this community that we so-called have now doesn't give enough of a shit. And they'll gladly accept something mediocre instead of something that could be not only quality, okay, but quantity. Final Fantasy XIV could be so much more. But unfortunately, the haters, the trolls, the sheep, they won the battle. And I guess that's where I'm gonna have to end this video, because there's no saving this game. It's nothing but a theme park MMO. Nothing but a social bubble. That's all it's going to continue to be. Until this community, or I should say, the larger majority, starts to wake up. Starts to realize what a shit show it's been. But until that day comes, and if it ever does come, if people really care about this game that much, that badly, I'll come join the chorus, and I'll fight back against corporate, against these paid fakes of community managers, community team. I'll call them out with you. I'll stand with you and we can fight them together. But until such a time, I'm just gonna quit. I'm just gonna sit on the sidelines, in the shadows, if you will. And who knows if I'll come back. But I really needed to vent in this video and get it all off my chest. So if you made it to this point in the video, to the end, God bless you and thank you, because that tells me that you're of a like mind, that you have an open mind, and that's what we sorely need, I'd say, in society in general, is more open-minded people. Because if we had that, then the world and things like this would be better overall. And let me tell you, okay? Let me just say this, okay? People make mistakes. I do know this, okay? I realize this. People do make mistakes. They can be wrong, okay? I could be wrong. And if I am proven wrong, okay, then I will accept that. Okay? Like, maybe it's still too soon to call this judgment. And it ends up that maybe 7.0 won't be as terrible as I imagine it will be. Maybe the developers will actually have a change of heart. Or maybe someone, like I said, will help Mr. Yoshida comprehend the feedback that he reads online. Or maybe Mr. Yoshida himself will better learn, I guess, other languages, which is not an easy task by any means. Like, I'm not expecting him to, go out of his way to practice every day, but even if he takes like an hour or two, like on one day out of the whole week to just like practice a few phrases or words or read a book, read words, like in different cultures, which I think realistically the game only supports German, French, English, Korean, and Chinese. But I think for the most part he could probably understand Chinese and Korean because the languages do kind of share a similar structure thematically and phonetically, so he probably does understand the Korean and Chinese maybe a bit easier than, say, English or like French. But I mean, the Japanese and the English kind of have had a pretty strong tie into each other for many years, so I could see him realistically picking up English in his like spare time to like practice a few things to understand like better, I guess. But man, if someone could just help him out, if someone could help Mr. Yoshida out, or like, even if we as players could even help him out by learning some Japanese, that would probably go a long way to helping him, get the feedback that he really should have and that he should look at, because it's not looking so good for this game in its present state. Like, when I saw the announcements for Dawn Trail, like, I was so just like devastated and tired, defeated, if you will, because basically all he could really tell us is new jobs for you and new expansive area for you, and then content wise it's all the same stuff you're familiar with. And man, I can't do it anymore. I can't do this anymore, so I'm not going to. As soon as my time is up here with my subscription here, I'm just done. I don't care about the housing anymore. They can take my house if they want. I just don't have the energy or the willpower to do it anymore. I'm sorry, my stream isn't freezing there. I just accidentally hit a button which froze my character. But as I said, people do make mistakes. I am willing to forgive if people really want this game to change and they start rising up in like some really significant numbers, then I will forgive them of their past misdeeds, their past mistakes. And I will join them gladly. Gladly, I'll join them to fight up against corporate and against these fakers, these stupid actors, paid actors, liars, and hypocrites. I'll stand with you to call them out. Alright, but until that day, it's been a long journey. I enjoyed certain parts of it. Not all of it I enjoyed. But I'll always treasure those great memories I made. And that's really all I could hope for, I guess. Anyway, hope to see y'all again somewhere else. Who knows, maybe we'll bump into each other in other online games and such. And maybe we can talk how we wish things could be, how we want things to go, etc. In fact, I have some Blue Protocol content planned. I know that there's a huge controversy over that right now, but I'll talk about that, That's something I definitely want to talk about. But for the most part, I'd say I enjoy Blue Protocol quite a bit and still play it to even today. So, see y'all around. And thanks for being here.